This is the 415ers podcast, brought to you as always on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. Please download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Please check out the Odyssey app. Check out the 415ers. Check out all the great podcasts they have. That's Marc Grandi. I'm Evan Giddings, coming at you twice here a week in the offseason. Okay, the other big news of the day, the week, was Kyle Shanahan discussing his quarterback room. He did so at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event, and there were a couple of big quotes, takeaways from this, and as only Kyle Shanahan can do, distributing massive amounts of love with very little explanation. And that is because he discussed Brock Purdy, saying that he sees Brock ready for training camp, barring a setback. So, we've done the math on the surgery and when he's able to return to throwing. He said he's going through, I think it was motions, but he's using a towel instead of a football. So he's going through, quote, violent motions right now without the obvious, most essential part of this. He also called Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold, quote, franchise-like quarterbacks. So, Marc, where do you want to start?
First of all, about Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan saying without a setback, they expect him back by training camp. I'll just say I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think I need to go down the road at why. I have talked about my skepticism regarding that really all off season, since of course the injury happened the day the season ended. It has been the number one story since then. I'll leave it at that. For me, Kyle Shanahan's comments about Trey Lance, and this is probably going to just sound extremely cynical, and please tell me if it is. Please tell me if I'm way off base here. For me, his comments about Trey Lance are, well, behind closed doors, we just tried to trade this guy. We didn't quite get the offers that we wanted. I'm going to talk the hell out of this guy, try to drive up the price, let everyone know I still love him. They're going to have to up the ante if they want to acquire him. And then they'll move on from there. I don't know. That's just how I feel. That was my first gut instinct, and I tend to be on the cynical side of things. So maybe I'm totally off base. Maybe I'm wrong there, Evan. But it just seemed to me a little bit, I don't know. It seemed too different from the way that he's talked about Trey Lance in the recent past. This seemed like a big change for Kyle Shanahan, and what really has Trey Lance done in this short period of time to warrant that kind of change in messaging? It didn't quite add up to me.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. And to further your point, I think he also went on to say that should Trey Lance have not been injured at the beginning of last season, he could have gone on to have a Brock Purdy like, to paraphrase, but to have a Brock Purdy like season, essentially saying he could have achieved, maybe what Brock did if he'd had the chance, and it was stripped from him, of course. So yes, compared to the guy that's putting Sam Darnold in the same conversation with him, he now puts Trey Lance in the same conversation with both Darnold as well as Brock Purdy. I thought it was pretty interesting and something that, yes, I don't think Trey Lance is all of a sudden off the trade block when you hear all the rest of the rumors that have nothing to do with Kyle Shanahan, which at this point I'm more inclined to believe. Because when Kyle Shanahan speaks about his quarterbacks, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it's CJ Beathard or Nate Sutton, like he is just so vague. And to get specific about all three of these guys now, to me, even though he called them franchise-like, let me rephrase that for you, Kyle Shanahan. All three of those guys, I would say actually Brock Purdy maybe has the best chance to be franchise-like. Trey Lance and Sam Darnold right now are franchise-liked quarterbacks. That is what they are at this point. And the fact that you're trying to talk these guys up, just to me, it almost does them a disservice, because now you're going to draw these fans back in expecting something that you won't even potentially give them an opportunity to prove. And I just really don't understand where it's coming from, outside of maybe you're trying to give a guy a good quote, and credit to David Lombardi of The Athletic, because I believe this is where it was reported.
Yeah, that's where I found it as well, from David Lombardi. One thing I did find that Kyle Shanahan said about Trey Lance interesting was his comment about how Trey Lance broke his finger, which we knew. That was his rookie year when he was filling in for Jimmy Garoppolo. Spot starts here and there. He had the game against the Seattle Seahawks where he played really the entire second half. after Jimmy Garoppolo went down. And then he started the following game on the road in Arizona in a loss. And then, of course, he had the game, the very end of the regular season, 1 week away from the end of the regular season against the Texans. But he didn't play much that year besides those 3 games. But he suffered that, relatively major finger injury. And what David Lombardi, as is quoting Kyle Shanahan, is saying from this Dwight Clark event, is that he spent a whole year throwing a football without a bent finger because his broken finger didn't quite heal right. And so he had to spend an entire offseason trying to just rehab his grip so he could go back to throwing a football how he normally had. And that was last offseason. He's trying to just rehab that finger. So leading into the season in which he's going to be the starter, where Jimmy Garoppolo is supposedly going to be out of here. Of course, we all know what ended up happening. But that whole offseason, Trey Lance really wasn't able to really just focus on what a starting quarterback should focus on, a young starting quarterback should focus on. He had to focus on rehabbing a poorly healed, broken finger on his throwing hand just so he could get back to throwing the ball in a way that he feels comfortable doing so. So it almost feels like Trey Lance was behind the 8 ball to begin last year when he was the projected starter. And then, of course, the injury happened, and we know the rest of the history. But I thought that was interesting since, as far as I know, Evan, we didn't really get that sort of information about Trey Lance's finger, that it really took all offseason for it to heal, and that he threw his entire rookie year with a straight finger when that's not how you throw a football. Just imagine trying to throw a football with a straight finger. It doesn't work. You need that for your grip and to put pressure on the ball and to get a spiral and to zip it in past the defenders and put enough behind it so that it gets to your receivers. That was interesting to me, Evan, because we didn't hear it before. And it gives me, if it's true, it gives me a little bit of confidence that the Trey Lance we saw in a limited capacity last year isn't the Trey Lance that he might be now. That with a normal season, with a normal hand and normal fingers, he might be a better thrower of the football.
Well, I know we've talked about this offseason, and we've had some various bold predictions about who's going to start, who's going to play what. At this point, I I feel optimistic that Brock Purdy will be back. Maybe not by training camp. I think that's a little overzealous on the part of Shanahan, especially when I think it was about a month ago, maybe more so. He was kind of tempering expectations, saying could be 6 months, could be 8. So it's interesting to see him sort of flip back on that. Probably for better. At least I hope so. But between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, because I do think that one of them will start the beginning of this season. I think you're on the same page. Who do you think, if all signs are true about Trey Lance's finger and him being a franchise-like quarterback, who would your money be on right now to start this season, Mark?
Oh God, I have no clue. This is my. I want it to be Trey Lance so badly, but I just have no confidence that the 49ers have confidence in Trey Lance. So if I was a betting man, if I had to put my hard-earned money on it, Evan, and I do not suggest doing this at this point because I have no clue, but if I had to, I think I would guess Sam Darnold, but I do not feel good or comfortable about it.
All right. You can have Sam Darnold. I'll take Trey Lance.
Fair enough.
Flip a coin at this point. I don't know who the hell is going to be the starting quarterback at the for the 49ers. I mean, gosh, knowing the way this thing is going by week 8, it could be I don't know who. Help me out, Mark. Who did they just sign? The guy from the Bengals.
Brandon Allen.
Could be Brandon Allen. Could be. Shoot, you got a better chance of being an Allen than. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, I would say at this point, to me, Purdy will play, I think, at least 14 games this year. Of course, assuming he doesn't get re-injured on the back end.
Yeah.
But I think Trey Lance should and will start this season if Kyle Shanahan's really hyping him up the way he appears to be. But we will see. That will do it for this episode of the 415ers podcast. Appreciate you tuning in. Of course, big stuff with the schedule. We're going to get into the rest of the division in our upcoming episodes. We're also going to dig into some of the future comments from Kyle Shanahan looking ahead to OTAs and, of course, position battles. A lot to review for the 49ers this offseason. And now we finally know who they're going to play. So very excited about that. But we appreciate you tuning in for this episode. We'll be back next Tuesday, twice a week here in the offseason, Tuesday, Thursday. Thanks for sticking around, and we will talk to you next time.